So, back in the 70s, what was the leading theory of growth? Have a think, or have a guess, if you don't know. Or talk to your neighbour if you like. What was the leading theory of growth in the 70s?
Totally. I have no idea.
It was Solo. Okay. It was
Solo.
All we had was the Solo theory, basically, or Solo Swan. Basically. So then, in the 70s. So then when we wanted to say, look at growth and natural resources, what was the natural thing to do? Extend the Solo model. Okay. And that's what they did. And in fact, one of the main people doing this was actually Solo in 74. So Solo's original model was from 56, yeah. And in 74, Solo and 3 other researchers kicked off a field where you extended the Solo model to allow for natural resources. And this is Dasgupta, Heel, Solo, Stiglitz. Okay. And I'm like super critical of this whole approach. But it's still good to look at it, partly for historical reasons. You should know about it and why it's so useless. What the strengths and weaknesses of it are. But also it's giving you an understanding that you can use later to try and do more useful stuff. Okay. Yeah, so you've looked at these videos as well, I guess. Yeah, great. So, what's going on in this model? We're still saying, look, it's very like Solo, isn't it? We've got household, firm, we've got labor, we've got one product, which is the widget, or I call it a widget, and we've got the dilemma between consumption and investment. So that's Solo, isn't it? What's the difference? In this version, we're just saying there's some fixed rate of input of some other thing that is needed in the production function. So then we have this. So what is this going to do to the properties of the economy? Remember, on balanced growth, what happens to ALL? It's growing, isn't it? And if this is growing at rate G, what rate is K going to grow at? On balanced growth. Yes, you should know that, yeah. Good. That's important. That should be like second nature, yeah. But we've already been told that R, and when K does grow at this rate, then Y also grows at the same rate, yeah. But if R is constant, that's going to be a problem, isn't it? That's going to put a drag on the growth in Y. Unless beta is 0, in which case we're back with the Solo model. But if beta is more than 0, this is going to put a drag on the growth rate, isn't it? And this is exactly what we find, isn't it? So what was it we found? We found that y dot over y. Does anyone remember? Isn't it? No, I can't quite remember. It's sort of 1 over.
It's times 1 minus beta divided by 1 minus alpha.
That's it. Yeah, it's this, isn't it?
Yeah.
1 minus beta over 1 minus alpha. So this is the drag factor, so to speak. So if beta is 0, we're back with solid. Y dot over y is g. Beta is big, that makes a bigger drag. And if beta is bigger than 1 minus alpha, what can we then say? Well, actually, no. Beta can't be bigger than 1 minus. Yes, it can. Yeah. So, can beta be bigger than 1 minus alpha? I'm not sure that it can. Because alpha plus beta has to be less than 1, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So beta is less than 1 minus alpha, yeah. Okay, I was thinking this doesn't make any sense at all, if beta was bigger than 1 minus alpha. Right. Okay, the bigger beta is, the bigger the drag on the growth rate. And the bigger alpha is as well, actually. But we won't go into why that is. But the beta thing is pretty obvious, isn't it? Okay, and what about the price of R? So let's just do the price. Just to, just going to go pick out the odd thing to go through, even though I went through it in the video. So here we're going to say, we're going to look at the price of R. So how are we going to work out WR? Have a think about it. Try writing some stuff down or whatever. So, you want a price. What's the first thing you think about?
Profit function.
Yes. Good. Well done.
Thank you.
So write down that. You were thinking the same, weren't you? So can you try and write down
Ja,
the
nummer
function?
30. Ja.
So it's for one of those final good producers, right? Put yourself in the position of one of them and think about what's your revenue and what are your costs. Revenue is what you get from selling your product, obviously. Your costs are what it costs you to hire.
This is my profit function.
Yeah, good. So then you need to take your first order condition and there's perfect market. And we just
So it's just
ignore that. Yeah. There's no market power.
and just put a slot.
Men när man dividerar hela i
Yeah, in the
koden
back
så
of
kan
your
man
mind, you
faktiskt
know that y is.
substituerat ut att
Oh, yeah,
Man
there
kvar.
it is.
Yeah, right.
So then you want to take the first order condition in R, don't you?
Yeah.
So let's see. Yeah, excellent. So you should have a K as well. It has to be paid for, right? Okay, very good. I think everyone's well on the way here. So, we're interested in a price in a market, then a price of an input, then we straight away, as Gustav said, like, okay, we need the profit function of the firm that is buying or hiring that good. Well, actually it's buying this, isn't it? And the profit function is PYY, which is revenue minus the costs, which is WLL, WRR, and if you like, WKK. This is unconventional notation for the cost of hiring capital, but it's kind of nice with the symmetry in the notation, I think. Okay, there's perfect markets, so all of these prices are exogenous to the firm. Yeah? The little firm we're thinking about doesn't affect, its choices don't affect these prices. That's crucial. And we normalize this one to one. We don't need to, but it's just easier. And then we're just going to say d pi by the r should be norm. And of course implicitly we've got in the back of our minds the whole time. This dy by dr is beta times y over r, isn't it? So we get beta y over r minus wr equals norm. So then taking that over, so this is wr. And of course, what this is at any one instant is going to depend on how much capital there is and so on. Yeah? The actual value of this. But as soon as we assume that there's balanced growth, then we can start saying a bit more, right? Because I'm not going to go through the balanced growth stuff. Oh, sorry, no. Yeah, I was shifting into the wrong key. So we know that r is constant, don't we? Here. So then, and beta obviously is constant. So then we know that y dot over y is wr dot over wr. Yeah? If wr goes up by 1%, then y must go up by 1%. Yeah? So therefore, this. Because we can do the math to show it, but it's just good to have that intuition right, ready to go, and then you can just write this down. Yeah? Because beta and r are constant, we've effectively got y, well wr is a constant times y. So the growth rate of wr must be equal to the growth rate of y. So the price of this limited input is going to go up. It's going to track GDP. Does this make any sense? If you think of that as land, for instance, what happens to the price of land as economies grow? Well, it goes up, doesn't it? Because people are competing. There's a fixed flow or quantity, really, of land. The richer people are, the more money they've got to throw around to compete, to get hold of the land, the price goes up. And of course, in reality, it may not go up, or it's highly unlikely to go up at exactly this rate. But actually, I tried to do some simple research on this for the sake of the course, but it's really hard to get good data on land prices. But from what I could find, it seems that this fits pretty well. Of course, if this is Uppsala, and this is Sweden, well, Uppsala's a bit big, but of course, certain types of land are the price is gonna change in a different way. So as Uppsala expands, it's like, oh wow, suddenly some land that was previously just agricultural land is suddenly, oh wow, this is going to be important for the city soon. The price goes way up. Things like that, yeah. But for land which is basically kind of staying in the same use, like for agriculture or within the city, within a city that's not growing. GDP is growing, but it's not like there's a radical change in the nature of the city. Then this is kind of what we see. So of course, if we think about the land in Uppsala is expanding a lot, the land would probably be going up in price more than this. But then you could go, oh, I was about to put my foot in it. Not Borlänge, Ludvika, I was going to say. Somewhere where it's not expanding, then maybe the price of land would be going up more slowly because if people are moving out. So of course, there's a lot more complicated stuff going on, but broadly. Okay, so in a future where we're actually going to be running on renewables, then we would expect something like this, right? Because there's only, if we're running on renewables like solar and wind and so on, there's only so much solar and wind to go around. Of course, you can argue that there's a hell of a lot of solar, so it's never really going to be relevant, this restriction. But of course it is, because you need the land to harvest solar, and we want the land for other uses. So in the future, in a renewable future, in the long run, you would expect the price of the renewable inputs, and in the long run also then the energy price, you would expect it to track GDP. And the rate of energy use then you would expect, based on this model, to be constant. Is that what we've seen in the last 200 years? Energy price tracking GDP and energy quantity used staying the same? No. It's the other way around, isn't it? Because given the Cobb-Douglas with the constant share, if this is tracking GDP, then this is going to be constant. If this is tracking GDP, then this is going to be constant. Yeah? Because the share WR times R is constant, is growing at the same rate as Y. And in the last 200 years, it's the latter that we've seen. WR constant, R tracking GDP. Okay. And just very briefly then, remember this trick, kind of, as soon as we're into the balanced growth, there's this trick which is to say, look, k dot over k is s y over k minus delta, and therefore, for balanced growth, y and k must be growing at the same rates, yeah. That's the sort of trick every time, kind of. Okie doke. Questions on that? Okay. So the next one, slightly more complicated. Abundant resource, costly to extract. So what are we using to extract the resource in this picture?
A dumper truck.
Ah! I always encourage you to take the pictures literally. So yeah, okay. And if you zoom out a bit from the picture and look more at the arrow. So we're still in this kind of extended solo model, aren't there? So are there really dumper trucks in this model? Leading question. No. What is there in the model? There's widgets on there. And labour. So there's only really two options for what we're using to extract the resource. It's either labor, widgets, or widgets and labor together. 3 options. So what are we using here? We're using the widgets on their own, aren't we? But they're not actually acting as capital goods. They're getting used up in the production process. Yeah. In the same way that they're used up by households when they get consumed. So we're sending a proportion of our widgets, we're sending off to here and using them up to dig up the coal somehow. We could also have said that we're sending some of our labor here together with some of our stock of capital to extract the coal, and that it would all come out basically the same, but it's a bit trickier math. But it's essentially the same. One way of thinking of that is that these widgets are kind of, instead of the labor and capital that you use to make these widgets, you just send that same labor and capital here. Nothing changes, does it? If you sort of earmark a certain amount of your labor and a certain amount of your capital stock as the labor and capital which made this, you could just also have a model where that earmarked labor and capital just gets sent down the line. Okay. And what are we assuming about the stock of coal here? It's never ending. But there's a couple more things. But maybe, we'll go a couple more minutes, I think. So have a chat to your neighbour. Yeah, it's more than that. So one thing is that it's never ending. Give me at least one more point. Have a think. So would this picture work, for instance? And it goes on forever, this whole.
Increasing marginal cost for extraction.
Okay, can you explain what you're talking about, or what?
Like the deeper you dig, the more difficult it is to get it out.
According to this picture, yeah. But is that in the model?
No, aren't we assuming that we have the same cost or the same effort to get there?
Right. And where do we see that? Which equation shows that? Anybody?
This is R equals
Phi or phi, if you like. So you chuck in some widgets, you're always going to get x. You chuck in x widgets, you're always going to get phi x units of coal out. Independent of, there's nothing about, oh, you've already extracted so much coal, so now you're going to get less out for the given number of widgets. It's just constant, isn't it? So it's more like you've just got a sea of coal, basically, that is infinitely wide. You never end up digging deeper. It could be below the surface. It is costly to get out, but there's such a width here, and here you are scratching the surface. It doesn't change. The depth isn't changing over time. Okay. So given this, intuitively, what happens to the price of widgets over time? Remember this? So what happens to the price of widgets over time?
It tracks GDP? No?
No. So what's the price of widgets in this?
You buy. So it's normalized to
Hang,
one.
I want to nail in this, give her a chance to redeem myself. No, you've got it, yeah. It's this, yeah. So we just normalize it to 1, it's constant. Because if you think about it, there's only one good in the economy, and we're interested in real prices. So obviously it has to be constant, otherwise it makes no sense. If this is rising, that's just inflation, isn't it? Because it's the only good. Okay, so the price of widgets is constant, and actually we normalize it to 1. So what's that going to tell us? Remember, perfect markets, you don't need to worry about market power and so on. So basically marginal production costs are going to be the same if there's no scarcity, which there isn't. Marginal cost of production is going to be the same as the price of the good. So what can we say about the price of coal over time? So the price of widgets is staying the same. You use widgets to effectively make coal, and 1 widget gives you 5 units of coal. So we can actually straight away say exactly what the price of coal is, can't we? I'm getting too exhausted, I can't even work out if it's phi or 1 over 5. Somebody help me. If phi is bigger, then you're getting more coal per widget, aren't you? Yeah, so the price of coal must be 1 over phi. Of course, you could set up the coal producer's profit maximization function. You could say that, pi of the coal producer is WRR minus WXX. Okay. Yeah. The WX is just the price of widgets, so that's 1. And R is phi x, isn't it? So then, well, it's just linear. Yeah, but the pi dx must be naught. Is this going to work? Yeah, so we get WR phi equals 1 here. WR is 1 over phi. You can always, if you sort of struggle, this kind of thing, it's very intuitive, but you should just be able to kind of look at it and say, oh yeah, the price is 1 over phi, but if you're struggling with that, you can always. Okay. So straight away we know that WR is constant. So then, given the Cobb-Douglas and the profit maximization function here, what can we say about R? Remember, what did we have before? We had like 10 minutes ago, we set up the profit maximization function and we ended up with I think we might have to do it again. So what was the profit maximization function? Y minus WLL, WRR, WKK, and then first order condition in R gave us that dy dr, which is beta y over R equals WR. And now we're saying that WR is constant. We can sort of say that almost just by looking at this. If WR is constant, then what's that telling us about R?
It has to increase with, it has to track GDP.
Right, on balance growth. You can always have off-balance growth if capital is, like all the capital got destroyed for something, you know, then this other stuff is going to go on. But on balanced growth, we know that R is going to track Y. Or others, in fact, I think this is going to hold whatever, isn't it? But some of the results we get are specific to balanced growth. Others would hold under any circumstances. Just have that in, good to have that in the back of your mind. Okie doke. And so, this one. So if you remember the graphs I showed you at the right start of the course, and we had time here, and we had log here, and I had like GDP here. And then it was like metals and primary energy, wasn't it? So last thing before the break. And this is like 150 years or so. So what two curves should I draw in? Have a chat to your neighbour. This is really important. You should all have this straight there, ready to go. Not väldigt BNP, eller hur? Om något annat drog det efter det. So which one follows GDP?
Which one of these two?
Ah, what curve should I draw? What should follow the GDP? The quantity or the price?
In that case, I suppose it must be the quantity, because it was like constant here.
Yeah. So this is super important.
Yeah, so the quantity must increase with y.
So what the data shows, so this is really, really important that you've got this totally taped, okay, totally sorted. The long run data shows broadly that it's this, okay. So the quantity tracks GDP and the price is constant. Of course there's fluctuations and so on, but in the very long run it seems to be. For energy, there's a bit of a break since about when? When does the price start turning up a bit and the quantity turning down a bit? Not down, but breaking away from GDP.
70?
Yeah. This is the oil crisis time when the OPEC formed and drove up the oil price massively. So then, and of course then there was a spike here, but the long run trend is that it's okay. So this looks kind of like this one, doesn't it? Does that make any sense? Like if you think about coal extraction, are we scraping the barrel now? If you know the metaphor, this is a barrel of coal. Are we down here scraping out the last bits? Which would be not consistent with this, right? Is that the case? What does coal extraction look like in Australia and no experts on Australian coal extraction here. And the US and China, where they're extracting. Is it like the old 18th century UK picture with people with helmets going down mines with pickaxes? What's it like? You must have seen. I mean, that truck is a kind of a clue, I guess. Okay. Here's an Australian coal mine. Okay. So, are we scraping the barrel? Are the resources, is it this, or is it this, where we used to be up here? Isn't this, I mean, this is like as cheap as it gets. Okay, sure, you know, we're a few meters down here or whatever, but it's trivial, yeah. The effect of that on the cost of extraction is like nothing. It's as if we're extracting the first ton of coal, you know, in terms of the quality of the resources that we're extracting. There's no difference. In fact, because of international trade and discoveries and so on, it's sort of better stocks today than what the UK miners were extracting 100 years ago, when they were digging these into little seams deep underground. What about iron ore? What does the Swede think about when you think of iron ore extraction? Kiruna. What's the quality of that iron ore stock in Kiruna, so to speak? Is it like, oh wow, you know, there's not much left and it's very low quality compared to what we had 50 years ago?
I think we have quite a lot.
And it's like 50% iron, you know. We're still extracting. The quality of what we're extracting is basically at least as good, if not better, than what was typically being extracted 100 years ago, in terms of the quality of the resource in the ground. In practice, of course, we don't send widgets down the mine, do we? We send labour and capital down the mine. In the model with the widgets, the widgets don't change over time, so there's no sort of widget productivity changing over time. If we send labour and capital down the mine, what happens to the wage that we have to pay the labour in a growing economy? We could do first order conditions here and say what happens to the wage over time. Yeah. No one wants to say that after the wage tracks Y, doesn't it? The wage, if Y is per person, if you have population growth, it's slightly more complicated. But let's forget population growth. The wage tracks Y. So that is going to push up your extraction costs, isn't it? Ceteris paribus, everything else equal. But everything else isn't equal, is it? Because the wage is going up, but what else is going up? Labour productivity. And assuming that labour productivity in the mine is going up at the same rate as labour productivity in the final goods sector, that is going to exactly cancel the increase in the wage, right? Twice the the wage, twice the productivity per worker, same cost, unit cost of extraction. So this is a pretty good description, actually. It's very, very simple, of what's been going on for the last couple of hundred years. Okay. The problem is that we can't carry on like this, can we? Because with exponentially increasing extraction, at some point this stuff has to start running out. I don't know if you read the blurb in the book. Did anyone read that? When is it going to sort of run out? There's something in the book about that. So if we I do a little calculation based on some data, how many tons of stuff are we digging up per year? And it's like 10 to the 10 or something each year. And the amount we dig up is increasing by about 3% a year. If we carried on like that, in 700 years, we would be digging up the entire Earth's crust every year. Okay. Which obviously is so unfeasible. The entire Earth's crust, we would be like digging it up every year. That's in 700 years. So clearly, well before then, this trend has to break, right? You know. Okay. So we'd like to have a model that could capture the past, something like this, but also make sensible predictions about the future, which this one can't. Okay, and we'll talk about that after a somewhat belated break. So how long a break do you think should we take?
Maybe 10.
10? Yep. So we'll start with just after half past. Which is basically a version of the original DHSS setup. And this is actually the sort of main case in the 70s modeling. Okay, the DHSS case. And this is where you have a limited resource, but it's costless to extract. Okay. So these lines, there's even little arrows on them, you can't see that. It's under pressure, this, you just have to turn the tap on and out it comes. Yeah. So it's free to extract. What happens then? If it was a free-for-all to extract this, if there were no property rights, then it would basically everyone would just come and grab it. But we're assuming there's property rights over this. Okay. So there's people selling it. Even though it doesn't cost them anything to extract it, they've still got a profit maximization problem, like how much to sell. And we're going to look at that problem first. So imagine you're sitting there owning some of this stuff, and there's a bunch of other people who are also owning stuff. You're not a monopolist, okay? What's your plan? What are you thinking about when you're trying to decide whether to sell or not? Did I talk about this in the video? I guess I must have done. Okay. So it's to do with what you can get, what you can do with the cash, isn't it? Or in particular, what's the rate of return on the cash? Because if you're not say you just want some cash, well, you could sell some of your resource, but you could also borrow cash from the bank. And if you borrow cash from the bank, you're going to have to pay interest. But if you sell a resource, you're losing the future growth in the value of the resource if the price is going up over time. So whichever way you look at this, the development of the price of your stock over time is crucial to your decision compared to what the equivalent, what the money would do in the bank. And basically, so this is the growth rate of the price, isn't it? I can't remember what I called the interest rate. I think I just called it rho throughout, didn't I, in the video. If this holds, then you're indifferent between extracting and not. Okay. Because the value of what you might extract is growing at this rate, WR dot over WR, which is rho, and the value of your money in the bank would also grow at rho if you convert it into money. So then you're indifferent. And then, just to check you're all on the message here, so if this is bigger than this, and you're expecting it to stay bigger over the indefinite future, what are you going to do? Just check with your neighbour and make sure everyone's... This is bigger.
I would sell it.
Så vi just, om vi tänker på er själva bara.
Men säger man att en god om man vet att alltid kommer att säga det.
Vänta.
So the price is bigger.
Då-
than the interest rate.
Priset stiger snabbt.
Ja. Och ja, det är vi som har.
Ja.
So I guess I would sell it.
Ja, okej. Ja.
Nej, jag tror det. Du får, om du säljer nu, så får du intäkterna nu och inte i framtiden.
Det är sant.
So if you sell it now, you're going to get the revenue from it now and not in the future.
And I want in the future because it's higher.
So,
I guess I would sell all of it.
yeah, so you need to get this intuition clear for you. This is important, okay? Just this intuition that if the price is going up fast, you're going to hang on to it because you want to sell it later when it's much more valuable. But if the price is stagnant, then you want to convert it into money, which is going to increase in value faster. So this means if the price is going up steeply, nobody wants to sell, which means that the price will actually jump up instead until you get to a sustainable price path, which will be this. If the price is going up very slowly or not at all, everybody wants to sell, which means this price, we're at this time now, yeah? This price must be too high. Everyone wants to sell, the price is actually going to drop and it will land on the sustainable path where this holds. Okay. So remember in the other models we kind of said, oh look, WR is constant, and then in the other one we said WR is going to track the growth rate, didn't we, in the first one. Here we're saying WR is going to grow at the interest rate, which will be bigger than the growth rate. We more or less have to assume that in our models, otherwise they kind of crash. So according to this, if the economy would actually look like this, the resource price should grow at a rate that is bigger than the growth rate. And then from the Cobb-Douglas, what can we say about the rate of resource use? If this is growing faster than Y, what's R going to do? It's going to shrink over time, isn't it? It's going to fall over time. Because we have Y dot over Y is equal to WR dot over WR plus R dot over R. So when this was naught, these were equal. When this is naught, these are equal. If this is bigger than this, then this must be negative, yeah? Resource use will actually be falling. How does this shape up when we look at the data? It's a fiasco, isn't it? It's just totally off. Way off, yeah. So the data says the price is constant, the model says it should go up faster than GDP. The data says the rate of use tracks GDP, the model says it should be falling. Okay. It's a total fiasco. Why is it so wrong? Well, it's this basic model of how the nature of the resource stocks is totally wrong. Okay. They're not free to extract. Is the key. And at the moment, for the time being, we're so far away from the time when they're actually going to run out that the scarcity rent is negligible compared to the extraction cost. Okay. So you're all furiously taking notes. So what did I just say? We're so far away from the time it's going to run out, or the typical resource, whether it's coal or iron ore or whatever, that the scarcity rent is negligible compared to the extraction costs. So if it is going to be exhausted at some point, there should be a scarcity rent. But if that time of exhaustion is like 100 years, 200 years time, and it's actually quite costly to extract, then that cost of extraction is going to be way higher than the scarcity rate.
How is it with oil in that case? Because that's what it's been popular topic for a long time. That is going to run out.
Yeah, good question. So oil, I guess it's on your reading list. Oh, it must be. There's a paper that I published with Daniel Spiro called The Elephant in Hoteling's Room, which is all about oil, basically, and to do with it. Basically, there's an idea that is very strong, or a lot of people believe, that to understand the oil market, you have to understand scarcity and the scarcity rent. It's all about scarcity rent. Why can OPEC make such big profits? It's because there's such a big scarcity rent. But we argue that the key to understanding the oil market is not the scarcity rent, it's market power. Okay, it's the market power that OPEC has is the key. There's a number of ways of getting at that and seeing why that pretty much has to be the case. I mean, one pretty simple one is, well, I don't know if this is simple, but let's give it a try. So, let's imagine we're in a socially planned economy. Okay. And we've got a bunch of different oil stocks. Okay. And I'm going to illustrate them as if they were coal, but they're oil. Okay. So one of the stocks looks like this. Okay. Another one looks like this, and the third one looks like this. Okay? I'm going to say one of these is Saudi Arabia, another is Norway, and the third is Alberta. Okay, which is which? Think about it. Just check, everyone. You should all be able to work this out. Check you're all agreeing. Saudi, Norway, Alberta.
Who's first?
Yeah.
Ja, jag tänker att
Norway.
ordningen som
So do you have a, what do you think?
First one is Saudi Arabia. Norway. Alberta.
Yes. Okay, well done. So, the social planner comes along and there's all these industries and things. Forget climate change for now, okay. We've got factories and stuff that need power. And we assume it's a good idea to use this stuff, okay. What is the social planner going to tell people to do? Is she going to tell people to like spread out and work on extraction across all the different fields? Take the cheapest first. Yes. So in the socially planned economy, where's everyone going to be working? They're going to be here, aren't they? Okay. And when will they start working in Norway? It's when you've got down to here. Then it will be, okay, now, and then even later, we can also start. And of course, if maybe this actually runs out here, in which case you would use this up and then go to Norway. And actually, the second theorem of welfare economics, we haven't learned that, but it basically says that if markets are perfect, you will end up with a social planner solution. Okay. So if we've already said there's no climate change. If there's no market power either, given what we said about the social planner solution, what would happen in the market if there's no market power? Imagine you try to open a firm and extract this stuff, but markets are perfect, there's no market power. How are you going to get on? It's not going to work, is it? You can't possibly compete with these guys. Yeah. So if there were no market power, the only extraction going on in the global oil market would be in like Saudi Arabia and equivalent places. The only reason these guys can extract is because the Saudis and others with these kind of stocks are limiting their extraction to try to drive up the price, to raise their revenues. And there's a kind of side effect of that which they don't like. They also let others into the market. And their strategy is a sort of balance between driving up the price and maintaining market share. Okay. I think that just about works. It's not really, I've never done that before as part of the course, so that's a kind of an extra. But why, how did we get onto that in the first place? Okay, yeah, it was you. Your pesky question, yeah. Yeah, you were like saying, which is a very good question, what about oil? And isn't there a scarcity rent playing a big role there? There is some role for scarcity rent, but I would claim that it's very small. So why is the oil market so weird, or why do we get these huge profits and so on? It's because of the exercise of market power. Okay. So I was planning to do a bit more here, but I think, well, see, I don't think I did a video for this. So let's do this. Okay. Have a go. Okay, I want you to work on it. Yeah, we'll do this it'll probably take the last 10 minutes.